welcome everyone to this expert hour specifically on the Asia region. Really happy to have you join us. Either if it's in the evening or in the morning for you. This session will be recorded, and we will also ask you to please mute yourself upon.
Oh, Yvonne, we don't hear you. We don't hear you.
Sorry. I'll apologize.
You mute yourself.
Sorry. Okay, so welcome everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever you are. Really happy to have you join us through this Asia Expert Hour session, where we will be discussing the report that we're currently writing in collaboration with McKinsey and Ashoka. So this session will be recorded. We will ask you to please mute yourself upon entry. Feel free to keep your camera on because we like to see your beautiful faces. And please share your questions and comments in the chat, and we will get back to you a bit later in the session. Also, as this session will be recorded, we will also be sharing the slides and the recording after the session, so that will be distributed. So let us just get started. So this is the agenda for today. We will have a 5-minute introduction of all the speakers. They will be introducing themselves. Then we'll have an introduction of the report findings from Katarina from McKinsey. And then we'll move into a discussion about the report, hearing from the feedback from the speakers and also eventually into a Q&A with the audience, where you are welcome to ask questions directly to the speakers. And then we'll end with the concluding remarks of the report and how you can get in contact with us if you have any feedback. So I'm just going to hand it over to Katarina to get started.
Okay, so so good to see everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces already. So for those who don't know me, I'm an engagement manager at McKinsey, and I've been part of the team that's been writing this report, and you'll be hearing a little bit more about that in a second. Over to Runa.
So I'm Runa Khan. I started an organization called Friendship in 2002. And we were working in the most remote and vulnerable communities of this planet, and doing something with quality and dependability in hard to reach areas, in the most remote areas where for 30, 40 years, no other NGO intervention had taken place. When you pilot a model there, you need to pilot it with a lot of, it needs to be extremely strong, very rooted. And I think that has been possibly the story of Friendship success, because we root we are very rooted in the communities, and our work is really being piloted in these very, very remote areas. So we work in 4 main sectors. One has been saving lives. Second is poverty alleviation. Third, empowerment, and all linked together by our climate adaptation. And we work through 6 sectors of health, education, disaster management, and climate actions, inclusive citizenship, sustainable economic development, and cultural preservation. So, and we are serving today about 600,000 people, direct service delivery every month. So we also work extremely deeply with the government, because there is no other way but to do that when you are, when you are striving to expand projects in these areas. So we have been, I think we've had a lot of learning and experience in this, but there is so much more to do, and there's so much more to learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Runa. We're excited to hear more about what you have learned about what works and what doesn't work. So let's move over to Lawrence and hear from you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Laurence Kwak. I'm the General Secretary of the Global Social Economy Forum, which is an international network of local governments and also the network of social solidarity economic organizations and enterprise. So it's a network of network. We have 77 members in 37 countries of 5 continents. And this GSEF, what we call GSEF, Global Social Economic Forum, was started in 2013 with an international conference, bringing both local governments who are working very closely with social economic organizations and enterprise from around the world, with those leaders and representative of organizations and network of social economy organizations in Seoul, in order to promote more transversal or cross-country collaborations and exchange of good practices. And since then, the association was initiated, and the International Secretariat is based here in Seoul, South Korea. And we are working mainly in 4 areas in order to foster a partnership, more equal and horizontal partnership between local government and representative of social economic organizations and enterprise. We are working towards a co-creation of public policies and institutional framework to develop and promote social economies in territories. But also we work very closely in terms of peer learning of good policies and good experience among all stakeholders. So of course, involving also local and national government. We are working a lot also in terms of building capacities for both local government and the representative of social economy organizations, especially in terms of how we could better co-create public policies and ecosystem to better support social economy organizations and enterprise. So we do organize policy dialogue in different continents involving all decision makers, but also depends on the request to provide very tailored capacity building programs or even national workshops involving all stakeholders. We are quite engaged in international advocacy and lobby with all international development agencies, UN agencies, and international decision makers to make visibility and international recognition of social economy as a key strategy to the sustainable and inclusive development, and especially to achieve and implement SDGs. And of course, we do promote a lot of exchange of those knowledges through publications and different programs. So see, if you are interested, visit our website, www.gsef-net.org, and let's stay in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And it sounds like there will be a lot of interesting touch points. I know we've also spoken in preparation of the report, so we look forward to hearing more of your perspectives. Now that we've already mentioned the United Nations, we also have a colleague from the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, in the room. Alex, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, nice to meet everyone. Good afternoon, good morning. I'm Alex. I'm leading several our initiatives looking at the public sector innovation and system transformation. I am also acting head of the Regional Innovation Center that supports all our country offices across Asia and the Pacific, as well as our 18 accelerator labs that is to great extent our transformation arm in the region. We work mostly with the governments that are our key clients, but obviously, given we are talking about system transformation, we are looking to engage other players in ecosystem. There are a couple of interesting initiatives that we are driving on the topics that are relevant for the report. One of those is next generation governance in Asia that we launched this summer, and that actually looks to support governments across the region to deal with recovery in post-COVID times once we come over the health crisis and we can move properly in the recovery mode. And obviously, when we talk about this future recovery, what is really important is how we keep in mind those systemic challenges that our region and the whole world is facing. and what are the methods, capabilities, and skills we need to bring for this. So very much looking forward to our conversation today and to contributing to it going forward.
Thank you so much. We're excited to have you and look forward to hearing from you. And with that, I'd suggest we move on to the next page and have a quick look at what it is we've been covering, just so you all have a bit of a framing for the conversation. So we are talking about an upcoming report that's been written in collaboration between Ashoka, Catalyst 2030, Equity and Green, the Skoll Foundation, the Schwab Foundation, and as a group facilitated by McKinsey, we've dealt with the question of how governments can better collaborate with social entrepreneurs. And in that have, first of all, made the case for why that would be a terrific idea. Like what do social entrepreneurs bring to the table can actually help governments achieve their goals? And then how can that be done? And to detail the how can that be done, we've had a lot of conversations. So we've done more than 50 interviews with stakeholders across the globe, both government representatives and experts from the social sector. We've had multiple focus groups with experts that have gone in detail through everything that we've put together. And we've collected more than 35 case examples that actually ended up in the report. I think in total, we've probably looked at more than 6. So with all of that information, what are the different areas that we've found, sort of action areas for governments to start enabling that closer conversation? We could move on to the next page. Fantastic, thank you. So we found 5 different areas or patterns that emerged from our conversations, and 3 of them could be considered more input factors. So what is needed to get the production of social innovation going, if you will, and then 2 that are more enablers that help these social innovations grow and achieve more impact. So on the input side, the first one that I'd like to start with is open information. So here we're talking about the more information is available from governments for social entrepreneurs, better social entrepreneurs are able to target their intervention and also receive feedback on what is working, what isn't working. But at the same time, social entrepreneurs can also be very, very valuable partners for government in collecting new information that is difficult to access. So for example, when we're talking about topics that are difficult for governments to get trusted data on, say corruption, for example, social entrepreneurs can be great partners to help generate data from a community. Then on the second element, building capability. So here what we found is that the 2 partners that we're talking about, governments and social entrepreneurs, often have very different skill sets. And both sides need to evolve their capabilities to better work together. So on the government side, that might mean building an understanding of systemic relationships, systemic thinking, and co-creation capabilities. At the same time, for social entrepreneurs who usually don't start out working with government, a slightly different skill set might be needed to enable the best possible collaboration with bureaucracies and administration. Simply because there's a lot of different working styles that need to be adapted to. The third element that I want to bring up is the funding model. So here we've actually previously published an entire report that deals with what is needed to better fund systemic initiatives in social entrepreneurship. So here we'll just keep that very short and say that there is a lot of work to be done in terms of better funding for these initiatives, and governments can foster a landscape of funding options that is adaptive to the needs of social entrepreneurs that pursue systemic initiatives. And specifically, there are a couple of elements where they might be able to rethink the way they distribute funds, for example, in public procurement. There are a couple of things that could be reconsidered to make these public procurement tenders more better able to accommodate entrepreneurs as tender. Let's move on to the enablers now. So on the enabler side, the very unsurprising one is promoting collaboration. So here we're talking about how do we get both within collaboration, so sort of between different government agencies, collaboration between different social entrepreneurs, but also collaboration across sectors. And one thing we found, and there are a couple more in the report, is that it's extremely helpful to have people who have cross-sector profiles and actively hire and seek out these people, because they bring networks in the different sectors that they have experience in and are able to act as translators between different. And finally, looking at institutionalization. So when we say institutionalization, we're talking about how do we make the social innovations that social entrepreneurs have developed more permanent, for example, by incorporating them in government policy or making sure that governments provide long-term perspective for programs that are running. And here, a couple of things that we found is, first of all, it is extremely helpful when governments are involved in the design process early on. So it makes a lot more sense to co-create from the beginning rather than have social entrepreneurs develop a solution, then once that's fully fledged out, go to a government and say, hey, can you please adopt it? The co-creation is important, not just between communities and social entrepreneurs, but also between governments and social entrepreneurs. And a second and final thought I would like to leave you with is on creating clear pathways to institutionalization. So when administrations have a clear idea of what's possible in terms of institutionalizing new innovative approaches, that makes it a lot easier because everyone in the administration has a clear idea of what might need to happen next, rather than innovations getting stuck in the system because it's unclear what the next step is. So this is or has been a very quick run through for the main ideas. We will be sending out a preprint version as soon as our layout is done. That should happen sometime early next week. If you're interested, feel free to read it already now. And then we will be doing an official launch in January. With that, we would like to move into a discussion and hear from our panelists on what your perspectives are on these different themes we've just. And maybe we could go to Lawrence first. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this theme.
Thank you very much, Katerina, for this presentation. I think it's actually this graph really summarize what you have written in the report. And I think I know that you are preparing a separate report on legal and police framework on how actually to promote a sustainable ecosystem to support social and strategic social entrepreneurs. Nevertheless, I think it will be very important actually that somewhere you have to probably mention that very basic legal framework and public policies are needed in order to go into this really this model of 5 pillars, which constitute of really a sustainable and more inclusive ecosystem. First of all, for instance, leverage the power of open information. We have experienced constantly, especially in the continent of Asia, that very little information is available, especially which are collected by governments, both national or federal or even local governments, because there is no legal recognition of, in many countries, there are some countries where increasingly there is a recognition of social entrepreneurs as a strategic partner for local economic development or even for the economic development, especially in terms of fighting against poverty or against inequalities. But very often that those social entrepreneurs are sometimes included in the for-profit organizations or enterprise, or some other countries they are included as non-for-profit actors, more as part of like non-for-profit or civil society organizations. So in fact that is a very key question that we need to leverage really open information and reliable and credible information on social entrepreneurs. But because of lack of legal and public policies with regard to the social enterprise and promotion of social enterprise, these are not very open available. And I think this is somehow linked to not so much probably in terms of developing a system of capability or build capability. I think even in the absence of those framework, social entrepreneurs, they could work closely with one another and with different intermediate structures to build capabilities of social entrepreneurs, but especially to foster development of sustainable funding models. I think those legal and public policies are very important. And I think I would say not only for the national government, we are insisting a lot that even in the absence of national or federal framework of legal and public policies, local governments can act actually to develop those public policies and also legal frameworks, because local governments do know better about those social entrepreneurs and how they contribute to the local development and who they are, and actually they could really initiate in this area to bridge with national and federal governments to develop more sustainable ecosystem.
Thank you so much, and thank you especially for bringing up the aspect of the legal framework. Something that some of you may have noticed, we've completely omitted from this report. The reason being that there is a separate report in the work, and we'll look at this in much more detail. So we didn't want to duplicate, and there should be more information and a publication about this coming out in 2021. So hopefully we will be able to have another discussion about just that. And let me just check, is Runa still here? I think she had to drop quickly. So would love to go to Alex and hear what your perspective is, especially when it comes to sort of the challenges of governments implementing the different suggestions.
Yeah, thanks so much, Katharina. And I think the report in a way captures the zeitgeist of where the challenges for the government and for our societies generally lie, right? So I think the framing around system transformation and how different players can act on them together, I think it's very important, right? Because especially in post-COVID times, I think that became so obvious that the critical challenges that we are facing either before COVID and that were just amplified by the pandemics going forward require systemic approaches, right? Systemic understanding, but also systemic ways of acting that I think we clearly discover that not governments alone cannot move forward. And I think very rightly, report feels that issues around funding, around working across institutions, around new capabilities should be at the core, perhaps, of the way how we try to bridge towards this future where we perhaps will bring those challenges we face to closer to, in a way, to the solution, or will make them less obvious. But I think, and I think the opening of this is also kind of a point for me. There is a bit of a clarification that as such, or we are looking at the systemic social entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship that wants to work and act on systemic challenges. I think this is a very important distinction because in a way the flow of the report and what is possible to do afterwards very much rests on it, right? Because I think what is critical about systemic entrepreneurship or systemic change is that many things become different, right? From the way how you scope problem, right? You have that diagram with the building that has a leak to try to intuitively point in that direction. But I think it differs very much in how we scope, what approaches we want to use, what kind of a frameworks we want to use, what methods and capabilities and skills we want to bring, and not less importantly, what would be the funding mechanism. And I think the risk for us is to try to, in a way, to tweak the current frameworks for the systemic challenges. What I think and what we discover in our practice is that requires a very, very different approach, right? So some of those examples that you might see governments already exploring mission-driven development, right? Where approaches how you mobilize different actors and different streams of funding to support countries to achieve really systemic transitions, be it green energy, be it more sustainable economy, be it circular economy moving away with the plastic waste and so forth, right? So those things require distinctive approaches. And I think it would be great if report pays a bit more attention on what emerges beyond usual entrepreneurship in the government or usual social entrepreneurship, because those can be new organizing frameworks into which social entrepreneurs can fit. And I think the second point that is related to this, and this is what, again, we discovered very much through the NextGen Gov initiatives that we launched this year after COVID, and at the same time, some other initiatives looking at the policy transformations across the region, that sometimes in our innovation cycles, I think in recent months, or maybe last year, the conversation about system transformation have become kind of accepted flavor of the month. I think what we would see very much on the ground, both in the government and outside the government, is that people are not yet ready either to accept that the conversation essentially shifts from very incremental improvements to systemic ones. And even if they accept that, there is really a dearth of evidence and knowledge of how we would deal with something that is more systemic than we used to, right? And I think here, for some of your conversations that we have in report about building these new capabilities for the government and the entrepreneurs and the different programs that the governments had, I think what would be useful perhaps to see, to look at, both from the perspective of system transformation, but also from the perspective of how government and public sector innovates. The history, the 20 years history of public sector innovation labs, starting with the Mind Lab in Denmark and going on, right? The whole, most of the governments around the world, not only in developed countries, but also here in Asia, even also in Africa and Latin America, they all went through this wave of public sector innovation labs, right? So we cannot say that the government didn't try to innovate. And we all know there are a lot of innovation champions across the government. So the question is twofold, is what essentially precluded or what made that wave to recede in many parts of the government that started this innovation journey, and what precludes it to transform into innovation 2.0, which is essentially looking at systemic and transformative challenges, right? We have examples of some of the champions who are trying to do it inside the government, but we also need to admit this is not part of the mainstream discourse in the government or part of the mainstream approach the government would take to deal with the challenges that they're facing. If I may, what I would also would like to explore maybe together in this conversation and going forward is to what extent, when we talk about systemic challenges, the focus on entrepreneurs as almost like lonely heroes would be an appropriate one. Whether we are talking about funding frameworks, whether we are talking about training programs, to what extent the focus should be on entrepreneurs, or actually how we can capture in those journeys bits of ecosystem where we would mingle people from the government, from the private sector, from the social entrepreneurship, from the civil society. Again, this is something that occurred to us in our project in Vietnam, Pakistan, and Philippines, where we back on issues of the plastic pollution, where we clearly understood that neither energy or capability to drive the change sits only with the government. At the same time, if we focus too much on the social entrepreneurship community, I think the risk yet, right, unfortunately, is that we would very much get drawn into the Silicon Valley accelerators, incubators, hackathons conversation that we know too well, and you pointed out rightly in the report, actually have never resolved systemic challenges, right? There is no unicorn that will help us resolve issues of climate change or inequality in Asia. What would be interesting again to explore how we can maybe rebalance to be the focus in terms of it's not entrepreneurs are really important. They can be energizing elements for this, but how we can have a more systemic view also on the players who drive that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You've brought up terrific points here. And I would actually like to try to fuse them together and then throw my question to Lawrence. So a lot of the points you've made seem to relate to quite a significant change in how we are operating right now, both in terms of like our tendency to focus on individuals as the heroes that develop a solution rather than teams or collaborations between different actors. And then also in terms of how governments think about collaborating and funding these kinds of initiatives. So everywhere there seems to be like a big change needed. And given how everyone struggles with change, I'm wondering what are the first steps for governments to take on that journey towards these big changes? And I would love to hear from Lawrence on what your perspective is there.
Thank you very much, Katerina. I think that I would like to also come to a question which was raised in the chat. I think somebody has asked, how do we start to get into the co-creation process? I think generally, you know, that when we do have some political leaders who are elected by the citizens, either at the local government level or at the national government level, where they really would like to bring some systemic changes, or both in terms of democratization or democratizing of economy, especially in this context of social enterprise, because that they, as an elected or political leaders, they need to address very burning issues such as the responding to the growing inequalities, or you know, reducing poverty, especially affecting particular group of people or group of communities, or even gender inequalities and so on. And I think generally that those social entrepreneurs and social economy organizations, because they have been working a lot with those peoples, and they do know about what are the issues and challenges that would need to be looked at from public policies perspective. So actually that there is a lot of consultation and negotiation going on, and some of those political leaders would really propose that, okay, let's have more public you know, consultation meetings where those solutions could be heard, not only from social economic organizations, but also from citizens. And that's where actually that these meetings and this hearing from directly affected people and stakeholders really generate a process of innovating, of looking at those challenges and those problems. And in fact, we realized that by multiplying of those spaces and opportunities of interaction between government officials and stakeholders who are really engaged on the ground, that in fact, a lot of those solutions are already embedded in the problems, in the challenges that they face. But just because we need to have you know, leverage from the government, or just probably we need to have certain policies to lift obstacles. So actually that some of those pilot experience are developed. For instance, I think in the case of Korea, I think Seoul Metropolitan Government has initiated. And precisely, I think the question that you have addressed, for instance, how to have leverage open information in order to fight against corruption, actually the Seoul metropolitan government has introduced 100% transparent open information about all what governments are doing, and including contracting certain, public procurement or in all decision makings. So actually, that by opening those informations to all citizens, that a lot of those hidden or behind the scenes decision makings have disappeared, and that has generated much more citizens to come up with their ideas, innovative ideas and creative ideas. And we realized that in fact, a lot of those people that we have considered as victims or as simple beneficiaries of the government actions do have a very innovative, creative ideas to innovate public policies. And through those recognitions, actually the government recognize them as they are the people who are capable to propose public policies, and then we are entering into a process of co-creation of public policies. And I think I would like to insist that it's not only sufficient to co-create our public policies, but we need to have co-management, joint governance systems once public policies are co-created and translated into certain programs and certain pilot activities, and how this will be implemented and constantly monitored and evaluated through those stakeholders who are directly involved, but also citizens who are benefited from those experience. And I think that the case of Seoul, for instance, Seoul social solidarity economy is still not representing more than 2% of GRDP. But in terms of, for instance, providing good quality of social services to the citizens of a city which has more than 10 million citizens, more than 10% of citizens today benefit directly from good quality of social services provided by social enterprise and social solidarity economy organizations. It's a lot, I mean, compared to that. And also, especially in terms of providing employment for women, especially those women who are professionally, interrupted from their professional careers, or disabled peoples, or certain people who are not able to return to the labor market with a decent labor contract. Actually, more than 60% of employment are provided by social enterprise. And I think those data are really convince citizens and other governments to also go into the process of co-creation of public policies. So I would like to insist that some successful and very good pilot projects are really basis actually to innovate those ecosystems.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. And thank you for sharing these examples. That's super helpful to make it tangible. I just want to jump in here because I think Runa has made it back. We had a couple of connection issues, and I want to give her a chance to also react. And then for all of you listening, feel free to also start putting your questions in the chat, and we'll try to address them in the next minutes. Over to Runa. Thank you. Do we have Runa back?
Okay, I'm sorry about that. So thank you very much. So I would like to say that I am not in the policy making. I come from a very simple field, which is actually working with communities in millions and ensuring that this and our findings and the way that we work, it works, and then carry it to the government for systemic changes to happen. And this we have been doing over the last 20 years. And so I would like to just share some experiences of what I feel are the most key components of what needs to be done really for this. Because I know that this has been a challenge everywhere. And our work is not only Asia, it's remote, hard to reach communities, which can be which I think for third world countries all over the world is a challenge. It's the same kind of a challenge. First, I think the first most important point is verity of the programs. The programs need to be very rooted and they need to be true. They need to show impact before trying to communicate on them, because otherwise everyone has their own egos, including larger organizations and including the government. So they do not want just someone without experience and without a track record to come and say, share our project, and we cannot expect that they will share it. This is a learning that we have had because we have never tried it and we have only implemented first and then. And I'd like to give you some examples. For example, our healthcare system is a 3-tier healthcare system working through hospital ships, then working through satellite clinics and community at the community level. We worked on this for many years. Smaller areas of family planning, of child immunization, of cervical cancer, of yes, and also for some primary health awareness we have done with the government, but the rest we created ourselves. We showed the impact, took it to the government. And today we are building, the government has taken over this system. They have agreed to doing it. So we are doing a kind of a build, operate and transfer of 5 new hospital ships and the whole friendship healthcare system into the government curriculum. But this could only come because at each level, we had tried to go not from the top all the time, but from the bottom. The local communities agreed, the local government officers agreed, then the local district commissioners agreed, and that went to the ministries and it came back from the ministry. So that was a success story. Just today, we have had a seminar on education with ministers, not only locally, but international ministers also, and secretaries from different ministries. And I think one of the commitments that the minister made was that they would be taking in the code of ethics of the friendship schools, because we have been working with government schools and they have found results. And also many of the systems of the way that we work in remote communities. So and there are step by step, we are taking it for linkages with the government. We have had challenges, and I think all of us can share this. The challenges that we have, I think, are not unsimilar. They are very similar. And I think the biggest thing which no one talks about too much is of course, the ego. And the ego plays such a big part in this. And if we truly, sharing information, we need to have humility to let the government feel that leveraging the power of information, by sharing data, co-creating data, they need to take the lead. Let them take the lead, because I don't think our goal is to become a leader. Our goal is to ensure that the people actually get the help which they are entitled to, in this. Building capacities, among civil servants and systematic entrepreneurs. You see, this year, COVID has proven quite interesting, because today, in our working areas, which is over half of Bangladesh, or more than half of Bangladesh, actually, in many of the areas, we are training, I think, one of the most difficult communities of the government, which is the police. So, and what we are doing it with the police, we're training them in values. They have agreed and they're doing it. We have trained them as COVID warriors. We are also together reaching places because the police can't reach, they are putting their seal on the friendship manuals so that we can reach it to the communities that we are working in. And this is trust and mutual respect. So it is something which for a systemic change to happen, and for the capacities of the civil servants to be enhanced, this awareness, I think deep respect is extremely important.
All right, let me just jump in here, because we also have a question in the chat for you, and
okay.
How long does it take for the government to take over or adopt what you've mentioned? So maybe you want to touch on that as well.
Yes, I could. Okay, first, I think it needs a credible number of years of you doing it yourself and being satisfied, and the communities, not only the communities who you are working with, but also for the civil servants at the level that you're working in. They must trust and promote you. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. A minister in our kind of countries can sign projects, but the bureaucrats can want it, the ministries can want it. But if at the level of the implementation, it is not accepted by the community or by the people who are going to implement it, then it doesn't work. So let's say you need three things. You need the scale, you need time, you need quality over time, and you need to scale to a certain number. And this, I don't think it can happen before 6 to 7 years. If you want me to give a figure, I don't think you should even look at it before 6 to 7 years. Because changes cannot happen with projects. Projects don't bring changes. Project brings some knowledge, it brings some improvement, it brings some help. It doesn't bring changes. It is when you are over time with communities that changes can happen. And it is the same with the government. Over time, you have to be with them. They need to start trusting you for change to happen.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that very much aligns with something we found in our previous report, where we did a survey with social entrepreneurs who, like, an overwhelming majority said that change doesn't happen in less than 5 years. It happens at between 6 to 10 or even more than 10
Even
years.
more, yes.
So fully second that. I think Alex had another question also towards you on hearing more about the competencies you've been looking for in the organization, so including soft skills. And how did you go about government engagement? Did you look at entrepreneurs in the government? How did you do that? And Alex, feel free to add on if I missed anything.
So the first part of the question, which you said, how do we select, it's about HR basically. I think, tell me if I'm wrong, it is about HR. And I think the selection of HR and imbuing the working ways in HR is for me number one. So we have about 3,000-4,000 people working in the organization. And out of which, if you tell me what is the one thing I never let go, it is HR. I never let go HR. And I think this is also a question of true leadership. I mean, in a sense, I'm not saying that I'm a true leader. What I'm saying is one needs to exemplify what you are talking about to every single member of the staff. And then let the staff be your voice. So you don't have to be the voice everywhere. And I think one of the biggest, I would say, compliment, because I think we have worked so hard on it. Don't think it's easy. When the Rohingyas came in, we had to double the whole organizational budget to the whole organizational work. We just doubled. And can you imagine new people in this environment, working environment, with hundreds of new NGOs and international NGOs in this context? What a challenge. And all I kept on hold was the people who were actually doing the service. I didn't concentrate on communication. I didn't concentrate on trying to promote, that we have done so much work or what we were doing, just doing what we were doing in the best way possible for the people we were serving. And today we are the largest health worker, besides the international WHO, etc., in the camps, in the Rohingya camps of 1 million people. And we don't even bring it into our core project as yet. So this has, I think, the strength is HR. If you can, bring in, I always choose people not on qualifications. Too high a qualification, I'm in problems. Because, you can bring in people of qualification to fill certain gaps. That is fine. And we are doing this all the time. We work with Ernst Young, we work with KPMG, we work with so many organizations, also development organizations. But the root or the cake itself, those are the cream on the cake. The cake itself is hardworking, honest, diligent, loyal people from Bangladesh that we have selected and chosen for their dedication. And I think this is very important.
Fantastic and incredibly inspiring what you're sharing. Alex, do you want to jump?
Yeah, so I maybe wanted also to qualify a bit question, because we often focus in reports or in our HR process exactly on the formal skills, right? Yeah. Everyone is talking now about system thinking, and before that was human-centered design, before that behavioral insights, right? They're going for formal skills, but I think what really, and that you highlighted so eloquently, what is really important is actually those soft skills that are often not captured by TORs or very formal HR processes. How working together, governments and social entrepreneurs can really pinpoint the respective competencies that are needed and really start going after them, right? Because I think especially in times of current crisis, this human empathy, but also hardworking, as you say, but some of the entrepreneurial skills, the way how you can engage governments, how can you engage different people, and at the same time perseverance and tenacity going for what you have to deliver. I think those are really, really great values that you unfortunately wouldn't find on a job description sometimes, right? So I think this is something to look for beyond formal trainings and all that.
Thank you very much, Alex. And I was very proud because Friendship is one of the two NGOs. One is BRAC and one is Friendship, whose business modality has been now accepted with the Baker Institute Library as part of a curriculum at the Harvard School. And at the interview, this is what I have said. I have said that I will not go into hard skills because you have the whole world talking about it. All the academicians are talking about it. But with all the hard skills in the world, to make something successful, deeply, truly successful, which can take on huge disasters and crises. And we have done that. And this can only happen when the soft skills are extremely firm. And this is why I talk about soft skills now more than hard skills, because there are so many of you, who know about hard skill much better than I do. But I really deeply talk about soft skills because that is what creates that little change. And please do not think I do not have hard skills also. Our monitoring evaluation system, I have had Ernest Young coming and doing a checkup and said, wow, and then we have them to, helping us strengthen it. So, you see, we are having the hard skill where it's needed, but it could only be put in because the soft skills are as strong. And I would really suggest, and governments recognize, I was very happy, we had the minister just now a while ago speaking and saying, we just like working with Friendship. We like it. So this was a very important point that they don't feel threatened. They don't feel that we are trying to take over their work, but we just supplement and fill gaps. And fill gaps, identify the gaps, listen to the community, listen to the government, hear what they say, listen to what they don't say. Hear that also, because that is where you identify the gap and you can fill the gaps. So I think this is something that we do very strongly, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm completely with you, right? You can have beautiful legal framework and all that. If you don't have right competencies, right kind of a soft skills and right caliber of people in your organization, whatever you have legally and formally will not be enough, right? So I think, and where we really are lacking, I think, collectively, is reflection on that softer part and what it actually contributes to development and to policy transformation.
If there are things which anyone would like to come and see, like to come and do, I'll give you an example of the time of COVID. I think Friendship has stopped working 2 days, one hospital, and 2 or 3 days, another hospital. Everyone in the field has been working. The government was taking the help of our volunteers to do their work also, proudly. And we are very proud of it. They were proud of it because they liked it. We did not close office for a day. We had the Swiss Development Corporation, one of the heads, calling me from Switzerland and asking me, how is it that Friendship has been able to deliver? Okay, changed slightly, but others are not. Why? So I had to actually give what we had done, and how we had foreseen and what we had done. Now, these are elements of where the government trusts us and why they are coming forward so much today with us. After COVID, we suddenly find that we have our work has snowballed, and I think it is this trust that we were there has, I think, triggered it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I just want to jump in here because this is incredibly inspiring, and I could listen to you share stories for another hour. But we're nearing the close of the session, and I do want to get in one final question to Lawrence. Let me just scroll up to the questions. So, for countries that have embraced the social and solidarity economy, how do you see the recommendations from the report fitting into this framework? And how do you think the Catalyst Network can collaborate with the Social Economy Forum to make this more mainstream? Love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Katarina. I think it's a very important question. I think what I felt from this report, as this report has so much insist about the role and potential of systemic social entrepreneurs, as the driver of systemic change, and also as the promoter of systemic response to the collective challenges. I think that we should recognize that they are not alone in terms of even driving this process and leveraging of these systemic changes. When I'm referring to the social economy, that actually we do have different already role players, such as, for instance, I mean, it varies from one country to another, but for instance, a traditional form of cooperative, which have much more collective governance structures than most of social entrepreneurs. A lot of also intermediary structures that I have already mentioned, who do play a very important role as really bridging between those social entrepreneurs and governments or decision makers. I would also mention a lot of those researchers, including those who are engaged in analyzing of what has been produced by social entrepreneurs and making those result more in the language of policymakers, more audible to the governments to recognize that in fact those actions are of systemic social entrepreneurs produce much efficient outcome of social challenges. And sometimes I think compared to what government has invested in terms of their financial contribution, those actions could provide or could result even 40 times bigger social impact than traditional enterprise. I think I'm speaking from some of our research outcomes that have shown that a lot of those social entrepreneurs are in fact generating much greater social impact and social changes compared to return of investment. So I'm saying that actually these systemic social entrepreneurs are not alone, and they are also in the ecosystem where they are constantly correlated and co-acting by knowing or by not knowing. And I think these are win-win relationships between different stakeholders who are intervening in social, what we call in social and solidarity economic ecosystem. And I would say that, for instance, for us, it's very important that constantly there are people who are engaging with consumers, with ordinary citizens, to make them to understand what systemic social entrepreneurs are doing and how they are actually working for more greater common goods and social and environmental purposes, because it's not always very visible and it's not always very spoken to the ordinary citizens. For instance, to the future generation of younger generations. And so we do have a lot of those courses going on at schools, starting from elementary schools to the universities, but also we do provide many experimental schools for students to experience what social enterprise, what cooperatives are, what are those social economy organizations. So I would say that, in fact, I consider these systemic social entrepreneurs as one of them, probably they are more visible in terms of, bringing much more clear changes, especially in the economic field, but also in terms of showing and building more strategic or systemic changes that they are bringing through their activities. But I think, in fact, that this has to be really in a more wider system of stakeholders who are supporting with one another, and also who are taking this transformation path together with different part of contributions. And I think this is very important if we really would like to build sustainable and inclusive economic and environmental society.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. And I think here we're coming back a bit to Alex's point on it's not about the individual heroes that are going to save the world. It's about the collaboration and the communities and all the different stakeholders being involved to make change happen. And with that, I want to be mindful of all of your time. We've come to the end of our session, and I do want to say a huge thank you to our panelists, to Runa, to Lawrence, to Alex, for taking the time to join us, for sharing their experiences. I think I'm not just speaking for myself if I say I'm looking forward to continuing these conversations and to staying in touch with all of you. Again, as I've said earlier, we will be sending out a preprint version of the report as soon as it's ready. Please feel free to already share it with people you think should be reading it. And then we're all looking forward to a bigger launch in January. Thanks a ton.